Today I'm talking about Ozzy Osbourne. This will be the first in a series talking about the life and times of Ozzy Osbourne. I'm going to start when he was born, then to his childhood and family life, then eventually to his career in music, starting with Black Sabbath, then onto his solo career. I'm not sure how many episodes this is going to be, but it was requested by a channel member. So if anyone is interested, I have channel memberships where you can request different video topics, and you will also get early access to my videos. Sometimes I upload videos up to a week in advance, so my memberships offer a lot for the price. But anyway, let me start with the history of Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy was born on December 3rd, 1948. He was born in a maternity hospital in a small village called Marston Green. He grew up in the Ashton area of Birmingham. He grew up in a fairly religious household, as his mother, Lillian, was a Catholic, but she was not overly religious. She worked at a factory for a company called Lucas, which is a company that makes motor industry and aerospace components. His father was a blue-collar working man. He worked the night shifts as a toolmaker at a GE plant. Ozzy was the middle child in a big family. He has three older sisters named Jean, Iris, and Gillian, and two younger brothers named Paul and Tony. He did not come from a wealthy family, as they all lived in a small two-bedroom apartment. Now, his birth name is John Michael Osbourne, but he gained the nickname Ozzy as a child. He had a rough childhood. He suffered with dyslexia, and he was bullied constantly. He also claims to have had a few depressive episodes as a teenager. Ozzy left school when he was 15 years old and worked various trades and blue-collar jobs. These included working in construction as well as working in a slaughterhouse. He got mixed with a bad crowd when he was younger. He even robbed a clothing shop, but he couldn't pay the fine. His father refused to pay it just to teach him a lesson, and he spent 6 weeks in prison. But on a positive note, he also enjoyed the fine arts. When he was in school, he acted in school plays, and he was later inspired to become a musician after he heard the Beatles, specifically the 1963 hit, She Loves You. Ozzy's pivotal moment as a musician began in 1967. He met Geezer Butler and joined a band which was called Rare Breed. This band only played 2 shows, but they broke up. Then Ozzy and Geezer Butler formed another band called Polka Tulk Blues, and this is where they met Tony Iommi and Bill Ward, who were from another band called Mythology that recently broke up. They decided to give the band a new name, and that was Earth, but then they were accidentally booked for a show instead of a band with the same name, Earth, and they decided to go with something different. They named the band after a famous 1963 Mario Bava horror movie, which was called Black Sabbath. They noticed people enjoyed the spooky imagery of the band, so that was what they decided to play. They played a heavy blues style with dark and occult lyrics. While they were recording their first album, Geezer Butler was reading a book about the occult, and he woke up and saw a dark figure at the end of his bed. Geezer Butler told Ozzy about it, and that was the inspiration for the song Black Sabbath. So you listen to the first line of the song, "What is this that stands before me? Figure in black, which points at me." And this was what he is referring to. The band eventually scored a record deal with Warner Brothers Records, but they did not invest heavily in the album. Despite this, the band was a success. This was something that people had not heard before. And in addition to this, Ozzy had a very dark and haunting way of singing his songs, and Bill Ward added some darkness to the songs with his drum beats. This was the birth of heavy metal. They followed this up the same year with the album Paranoid. This one had one of their big hits was the title track. This was also a pivotal time for Ozzy as he met his future wife Sharon. Her real name was Sharon Arden, and she was the daughter of Don Arden, who was their new manager. At that time, Sharon was working as a receptionist. At first, Ozzy and Sharon's relationship was strictly professional, but since they worked together, it led to a relationship. After this, the band released Master of Reality, which was released on August 6, 1971, through the Vertigo record label. This album was very influential, and it's considered to be the foundation of doom metal, stoner rock, and sludge metal. The album was produced by Roger Bain, who also produced the previous 2 albums. Master of Reality was recorded at Island Studios in London from February to April 1971. Guitarist Tony Iommi and bassist Geezer Butler down-tuned the instruments during the production, achieving what Iommi called a bigger, heavier sound. This might also be one of the first instances of guitars being tuned down to create a heavier sound. This is something that many metal bands do today. Master of Reality peaked at number 5 on the UK albums chart and number 8 on the US Billboard 200. The album received negative reviews at first, but it has stood the test of time. The album is now considered one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. It was certified double platinum after having sold over 2 million copies in the US. In September 1972, Black Sabbath released Black Sabbath Volume 4. This was another album that the critics did not like, but it was certified gold in less than a month, and the band's fourth consecutive album to sell over 1 million copies in the United States. Volume 4 is the fourth studio album, released in September 1972 through Vertigo Records. It was produced by Tony Iommi, making it the first Black Sabbath album not produced by Roger Bain. Patrick Meehan, the band's then manager, was listed as co-producer, though his actual involvement in the album's production was minimal. In November 1973, Black Sabbath released the critically acclaimed Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. For the first time, the band received favorable reviews from the mainstream press. This was their fifth studio album. It was produced by the band and recorded at Morgan Studios in London in September of 1973. The writing process for the album began in Los Angeles, California, but not everything was smooth sailing. It was initially hampered in part by the band's substance abuse and fatigue following their 1972 to 1973 world tour in support of the previous album, Volume 4. The band later relocated to Clearwell Castle in the Forest of Dean, Gloucestershire, England, where guitarist Tony Iommi wrote the main riff of what became the album's title track and the lead single. After this, they released Sabotage. This is their sixth studio album, released on July 28, 1975. The band was going through a difficult time as the album was recorded in the midst of a legal battle with the band's former manager, Patrick Meehan. These legal problems caused a lot of stress, affecting the recording process and in turn inspiring the album's title. It was co-produced by guitarist Tony Iommi and Mike Butcher. Then they released Technical Ecstasy, the seventh studio album, produced by guitarist Tony Iommi and released in October 1976 through Vertigo Records. This album saw a change in their sound. The album received mixed reviews from critics, but was a commercial success, peaking at number 13 on the UK albums chart and number 51 on the US Billboard 200 chart, later being certified gold by the Record Industry in 1997. Next, in 1978, Ozzy Osbourne left the band for 3 months to pursue a solo project called Blizzard of Oz. The name was suggested by his father. The band consisted of 3 members of the band Necromandus, who were an English rock band from Egremont, Cumberland, England, who formed in 1970 and were discovered by Tony Iommi. And Necromandus only recorded one album in 1973, then they split up. That album was not even released until 1999. Necromandus also supported Black Sabbath in Birmingham, back when they were called Earth. But anyway, this version of the band that Ozzy Osbourne started, called Blizzard of Oz, was basically the first incarnation of a solo band, but really didn't lead to anything. But after this, Ozzy Osbourne went back to Black Sabbath at the request of the other band members. So the band spent 5 months at the Sounds Interchange Studios in Toronto, where they wrote and recorded the next album, Never Say Die. This was a difficult record for the band, as they all had substance abuse problems, so it made it difficult for them to get anything done. Never Say Die is the 8th studio album, released on September 29, 1978. This is the last studio album with the band's original lineup and the last studio album with Ozzy Osbourne until the 2013 album 13. It was certified gold in the US on November 7, 1997, and as of November 2011, it has sold 133,000 copies in the United States. The album received mixed reviews, with critics calling it unbalanced and insisting its energy was scattered in too many directions. This was another album that showed a departure in their sound. So in the next episode, I'm going to talk about how Ozzy left Black Sabbath to start a solo career and how Black Sabbath replaced him with a new singer. So stick around for part 2. At the time of this recording, it's not done yet, but once it's done, I'm going to put it in the end screen. I'll stick it right there. So thanks for watching. Please like this video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.